Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the Gamma Sector, where we take comics, movies, video games, expose them to the world to find out how they work. My name's Taylor Campbell. Thank you for joining. And today is a special video. We're going to be celebrating Bandicoot Month, which is where me and a few other YouTubers are going to be talking about Crash Bandicoot and some of the things he's done for gaming. But today I'm going to talk about some of the things he's done for comics. Back in about 1992, thereabouts, Japan released a limited series manga specifically about Crash Bandicoot to promote the second game. And it actually does some really interesting things. And it's kind of hard to find and people don't talk about it much. It's kind of an obscure item from Crash Bandicoot's history. So I want to talk to you about it. So without further ado, let's get started. The story follows about 1 year after the first Crash Bandicoot game, and begins almost immediately with Crash finding a note on the table from his girlfriend Tana saying that she isn't happy with Crash and she's going to leave and she's going over to Pinstripe's house. And after Crash reads this note, he literally floods his house with sad tears. His sister Coco comes along and is kind of annoyed with how pathetic Crash is acting and says, hey, maybe you lost Tana because you're just not a tough guy. Maybe you need to work out more. And so Crash decides, no, yeah, I'm going to go try that. Crash tries working out but finds, like many of us, that he prefers to nap and eat over workout. Coco finds him slacking off in the gym and is very disappointed. And she brought a basket of apples to share with Crash but decides, no, what, he's not worth it. He's not putting any effort into this, so he doesn't deserve this reward. Crash is annoyed by this and says, know what, fine, you're not going to give me these apples. In America we call it Wampa fruit. You're not going to give me these apples, so I'm just going to leave and find the most perfect apple and I'm not going to share it with you. Crash leaves his house and as he's walking he finds the perfect apple. Like, it is huge, it is juicy, it is shiny, and he fell in love with this. He chases it down this neatly carved hallway in the forest, and out of nowhere is suddenly teleported into this room. It has 5 warp gates, and a giant hologram head of Neo Cortex shows up in the middle of the room. So, yeah, we just made it into the beginning of the second game. The rest of the book loosely follows the plotline of Crash Bandicoot 2, and creates story ideas around the different elements of it. We have a story for finding the rocket surfboard, we have a story for meeting Polar, and we even get stories about the different villains in the game. So, the Komodo brothers, Ripperoo, etc. Now let's talk about the story. First of all, if this were a Saturday morning cartoon, and I sat down and I watched the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, and then I watched Sonic the Hedgehog, and they announced that Crash Bandicoot was coming on next, I wouldn't be surprised. It has that Saturday morning kind of feel, and odd enough, if it was on TV, it'd probably be the best out of those 3. Each chapter of the story is unique and self-contained, so, I never really got bored reading through the story, yet there is an overarching, overall point to the entire story itself. All of these self-contained chapters really are just an extension of the overall goal, which is to get power crystals and power up Cortex's world-saving machine, which turns out to not be a world-saving machine, and so we don't give him the crystals. So in that respect, I'd almost say it's kind of like Pokemon, right? Where, Pokemon had the same kind of deal where each episode was self-contained, but they did contribute to an overall goal and purpose, and that's what Crash Bandicoot did. By far the biggest contribution this book makes, though, is creating a narrative for the second game, which was really nice. I mean, after reading this book and keeping this book in mind, it turned my playthrough of the second game from a brutal platformer to a real adventure with consequences and characters that I cared about, because in the back of my mind I had this story to go along with them. this is where we really see the differences between how Western culture and Japan see Crash Bandicoot. If you think back to the commercials that we used here in America to advertise Crash Bandicoot, you would understand Crash to be kind of this loud and annoying character. But in Japan, he's portrayed very differently. Rather than being loud and annoying and up in your face and all that stuff, he's kind of cutesy. He likes to dance, he likes to jump, he likes to dance and jump with other people. That's kind of how he's portrayed. He's a lot more, I want to say friendly. No, here's what I'm going to say. He's a lot less Looney Tunes in Japan. And that's kind of the art style we're looking at here when we look at this book. It's cutesy. And it's cutesy all the way through. Now there are some things that are lost in translation when we're talking about this book. The art isn't the only thing that is very Japanese. And the best way I can describe it is earlier I compared this story to the older Pokemon episodes. And it's no big secret to people who follow that show that there had to be some episodes that were cut down or cut completely before they could make it to America. And that's just because America and Japan have a different moral hierarchy. We assign weight to different ideas. And so if you're an American reader and you're reading like an English translation of this book, there's going to be some things that are going to jump out that are going to maybe confuse you a little bit, because they confused me a bit. One thing was that this book worked so hard to come up with this Saturday morning kind of atmosphere about it, but Japan doesn't really have too much of a problem with minor swear words. So occasionally a character would swear, which really took me out of the Saturday morning experience because that's just not a thing in Saturday morning cartoons. And as far as the creators and the translators are concerned with this book, those kinds of things aren't wrong. So what is my overall consensus of the book? Overall, it's supposed to be a fun and silly adventure through Crash Bandicoot. It's supposed to be random, it's supposed to be exciting, it's supposed to be a little bit cheesy, and it really succeeds in that aspect. Its biggest contribution, again, was how it created a narrative for the second game, and knowing that and having read the book, it makes the second game a lot more interesting to me as a player, just to see, you know, there is a story behind all of this if I want there to be. And overall, it's a fun read, and I'd recommend it if you were into any of these things. Specifically, if you like shows like the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, then you'd probably find this book a very entertaining and very fun read. So, have you heard of this book before? Have you read it before? What book would you like me to review next? Make sure you go ahead and put your thoughts down in the comments below. And until next time, thank you for joining me. Have a great day. And remember to always be your best self.